Hi, it's Tom from Raise Your Garden, where we're going to talk about how to make your own worm tube. What you need is a sewer line 6 inches wide, any type of PVC. I have a rather thick one here, a thinner one here. It does not need to be that thick, but I only could find from our local plumber that's what size he had, so I took a 10-foot section of this and I ended up being able to make 4 worm tubes out of it. You want each worm tube to be 2.5 feet, so that is 30 inches. Besides the PVC pipe, items that you'll need. For one worm tube, you'll need an end cap, obviously, that fits the 6-inch pipe. And this actually becomes your mole protector or other critter protector when we're done. You'll need a drain grate, which is this, and then we'll actually end up gluing a screen. I don't know if you can see that, a screen inside, and that will be our ventilation cap and basically keep the bugs out screen. So you'll need one of those for each tube. Supplies you'll need: hacksaw, probably the easiest way to cut your PVC pipe, or you can use pretty much any saw that works for you. You'll need a regular tape measure. You'll need a flexible tape measure. I like using a Sharpie so I can see my lines. And you'll also need a yardstick. First thing you're going to want to do is measure off 18 inches. 18 inches is the amount that's going to be in the ground. So you want to just put a line at 18 inches from the bottom. So from here down is going to end up being buried. So I don't mind using a Sharpie because this is all going to get buried. So you can draw all over it, and if that helps you do it. Next thing you're going to want to do is put on your end cap. You're going to start off by just making a dot above your end cap, about 1/4 of an inch from it. Single dot. And then you're going to make your first straight line. So we have a straight line. I have one dot or a line, about 1/4 of an inch. That's going to be my first hole. Now I'm going to use the flexible tape to go on my tube, and I'm going to go up 2 inches from my first line. So I'm just marking 2 inches, 2 inches. So once I got my first vertical line, and I have marks every 2 inches, now I'm going to go to the right and to the left 2.5 inches. Use my flexible tape, put a mark there at the top, go to the bottom, same thing, 2.5 inches, put another line. Now I'm going to make another straight line 2.5 inches away from the first line. And I'm just going to continue on 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, and I'll have a bunch of vertical lines. So I've continued to draw my lines 2.5 inches apart. And once you get to your last line, you'll notice you do not have 5 inches left. You actually only have about 4 inches left. So your last line, instead of 2.5 inches, actually make it 2 1/4. And that way, that's your last line's the same on both ends. You split the difference and it ends up being, instead of 2.5 inches, 2.25. And then I'll draw my last line in. Basically the yardstick is just being used as a nice straight edge. Okay, so these ones are 2.25, and everywhere else you got 2.5 inches. So on these vertical lines, now I'm going to start, once again, I'm going to make a mark about 1/4 of an inch up, and then every 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, I'll have another line. So you can use a yardstick for this or that flexible tape, either one will do. And I'm just going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, which will give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 holes on one of those lines. So I'm going to go around now and just put all my 2-inch lines on these 2.5-inch marks. Now I'm going to have to add lines and holes in between these lines. This is once again 2.5 inches away. So for those perfectionists out there, if you want to be perfect, obviously the worms don't care that much. But if you want to have all your holes perfectly aligned, you're going to actually take from one line and go in 1.25 inches. So if you want to make this thing perfect, take 1.25 inches from the line, put a mark, go up 1.25 inches, and put a mark. Take your yardstick, run a straight line, up like so. Now you can pretty much just eyeball it off of this vertical line. So we have, once again, a hole, 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 hole on these lines that are 2.5 inches away. And now I added another line in between, and I'm going to add extra holes, and it's going to be halfway up. So if you wanted to measure, you could, or I can just eyeball where halfway is and just make some more lines. Where there is a horizontal line, that's going to represent a new hole. So now I'm going to go and add all my 1.25 inch lines all the way around the tube. I'm using this 3/8 drill bit at the very end. I think it's easier to start with a little bit of a smaller bit, just to put some holes in there so the big bit has something to follow through. This is a 1/4 inch drill bit. So what I'm going to do is kind of get a grip on it, put my first hole. Remember, I'm going every 2 inches. Alright, so that's my first line. And now I put my lines that were going to be in between, but I like to just stay, once again, do all my lines that are 2.5 inches apart first. That way it's easy to eyeball where the middle is for the next hole. And I can see right here that my line's off a little bit, so it's okay. Once again, it's just going to be buried in the ground. Those are just to basically give myself an eyeball on where I wanted to drill. I see it's off, so I don't worry about it. And I just keep going in right across the last one. So I put 1/4 inch pilot holes on all my lines that were 2.5 inches apart. And like I said, it really wasn't even necessary to draw the lines in already, the ones that are 1.25 inches away. It's pretty easy when you're looking straight down. Basically all you're doing is putting a hole in between the 4 holes as you go up the line. Alright, I have all my pilot holes all the way around the tube. So you can start seeing the worm tube come together here. I'm going to switch drill bits from my 1/4 inch to my 3/8. And you'll see why in a minute it was important to have the smaller holes, because this bigger bit is really going to bite into it. And if someone was holding the other end, it'd be a little easier, but I don't have much trouble since there's already holes in it. It doesn't take much. The bit is going to follow the hole that's already there. Yeah, so it's more drilling putting all the smaller holes in, but it actually makes life easier. So this is how your worm tube is going to look upon completion. Each hole on these lines are 2.5 inches wide, and you're going up on the vertical line 2 inches. Alright, now it's time to put some holes into your end cap. You'll end up with 9 holes like that one right there. Easiest way to do that is just make some lines, divide the end cap / drainage cap / mole protector in several parts like that, and you'll end up putting your first hole about 1 inch from the side, so it'll look like this. On my way to buy a screen for my end caps, I saw this in the dumpster, so I pulled it from the dumpster, so I saved myself $2 in screen. So all I did was take my utility knife, cut off my screen in the frame. Now I'm left with the screen. From there, get your end cap, find a spot, use as little screen as possible, less cutting. Take any Sharpie, put a circle around it. That's the size of the screen I want. Now I take my shears and I quickly just, easiest way is make a square first instead of doing your circle. Cut off the square with the shears. And the finished circle should actually be a little bit smaller. Inside the cap, you got a little bit of room with the plastic, so it's better to cut a little smaller than the actual red circle you see there. After I got my screen, I'm just going to take some hot glue, run it on all the pieces of plastic in here, and then without using my finger, because I don't want to burn myself, just use something to push the screen down, and voila, end cap is done.